Keith is picking up the bass, and he and Jagger are really driving it by this stage. There's another bit in the film where Jagger turns to Charlie Watts and says, oh, you know, for heaven's sake, Charlie, put some life into it. And the two of them, Mick and Keith, at this point, are absolutely driven.
Godard's film was released in November 1968, a week before the release of the album Beggar's Banquet. Although many fans were bewildered by Godard's work, the track Sympathy for the Devil opened the new record and would become another classic in the Stones' canon.
Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a man, well, I've been around for a long, long year. So many men, so vague.
Sympathy for the Devil is melodically not that interesting, but rhythmically it's a fabulous track. And we have the Godard stuff, the 1+1 thing, where they have no idea how to take it at all. You know, they're trying it as a ballad, they try it as a samba, they try it, and eventually they hit on this thing. And Anita comes up with the woo-woos, the Witches chorus, and you know, the whole thing falls into place.
If you take a title like Sympathy for the Devil, you know, that's a very different kind of idea than this kind of angelic 60s vision that we've been given, and almost in a kind of Blakean way. You know, the Stones and a lot of other people, I mean, obviously, you know, Jimmy Page, are, you know, in a different and harsher way. Obviously, Charles Manson. I mean, you know, this kind of stuff was in the air as the 60s began to fade. And, you know, there was a kind of fascination with you know, what's on the other side of this coin? You know, what, you know, well, if we're not getting back to Eden, you know, what are the other possibilities?
Nice to meet you. Hope you guess my name. But what's buzzing in you is just the nature of my game. Get down with it.
Sympathy for the Devil is an incredibly important, even anthemic song. And what it tells us is that we are no longer in this sort of dizzy utopia of LSD and flowers and love and peace. And Satan is sexy, suddenly, you know. And the Stones, more than anyone else in that period, flirted with the diabolical. And it had a lot to do with an idea of decadence that was endemic to the smart set in London, if you like, that the Stones were welcomed into. And it tapped into Aleister Crowley. It tapped into a tradition of devilry, if you like, that's always been there on the kind of fringes of English culture. This is a big part of what the Stones are doing here, you know, and it taps into blues mythology. Robert Johnson, Hellhound on My Trail.
And the day keeps on wearing me, the hellhound on my trail, hellhound on my trail, hellhound on my trail.
This is a big part of what the Stones are steeped in.
Beggar's Banquet was released in December 1968 and was instantly hailed as a masterpiece. Both a return to basics and a significant progression, this collection of powerful songs reclaimed the Stones' position as one of the greatest acts in popular music.
There was a real reaction to just the volume and overkill, really, of 1967, where there was, you know, Hendrix, really, I suppose, and Cream. You know, Beggar's Banquet was, you know, was full of country blues and playful Appalachian sort of country arrangements, string band arrangements, you know, Factory Girl, Dear Doctor, Prodigal Son. It sounds really authentic to me. I mean, it sounds like a bunch of, you know, decadent English white boys.
How almost folky some of it sounds. There's a lot of acoustic guitars on there. I mean, some great riffs on there. But it's not nearly as heavy as some of the later albums. And it's got a very appealing, slightly ramshackle semi-acoustic feel to it.
They're really kind of digging deep into the sort of roots of American music, and they're throwing off the sort of spangled cloak of flower power. And we're just not interested in that anymore. We're not interested in debutantes. We're really now interested in this idea of America. It brings about their greatest music, because I don't think any British band has ever come so close to tapping into the sort of soul of American roots music.
Jagger's approach to lyrics was also evolving, and with this new set of tracks, he seemed to be finding his own distinctive voice.
There was a sort of element of Jagger just kind of, as a writer, I think, really engaging the times. You know, Street Fighting Man, I mean, the kind of ironic anthem, an ironic political anthem, you know, this kind of sense of frustration at the same time as, you know, we're a band. You know, we're not leading the revolution.
Everywhere I hear the sound of marching George feet, boy. 'Cause summer's here and the time is right for fighting in the street, boy.
Street Fighting Man was very reflective of the period in time with people on the streets for one reason or another, whether it was CND or anti-Vietnam or whatever it was. It was very reflective of student unrest and young people's disenchantment with the government and the authority of the times. But I don't think he was leading that. He was simply looking at the papers and the news and seeing what was going on, and then reflecting it as a younger person. Most great rock songs reflect the attitude of the audience and the generation at the time and the way that they feel. They hold a mirror up to the audience and they reflect back at each other. That's what rock music actually does.
Even as the Stones were, in a sense, coming apart, I mean, because this, you know, in a sense, that record is about the dissolution of Brian Jones. It also announced a kind of resurgence of the Rolling Stones, chronicling a very complicated and troubled time, and not, you know, this wasn't Flower Power. You know, this is definitely sort of post-Flower Power. This is a kind of understanding of what was ahead.
In keeping with this darker vision of the 1960s, Jagger had spent the months following the recording of Beggar's Banquet on his first major acting role. The project, which the singer had been involved in since its early development stages, was the brainchild